welcome to, oh right, that did come out in 2020.
Right? From here in Alaska. I just love it's like not the exposure, but the white balance is already pretty blue, and then we're in like a blue room, so it just looks like we're freezing.
This is already, though, way more colorful than any time I've ever done a worst stuff video. So with my flesh-colored backgrounds and broken VHS.
But I'll still look like Casper. I'll look like the whitest dude.
You did before I fixed the exposure on here. You sat down like...
I still do, man. Come on.
Today we're reviewing movies with powder. We decided to bring characters in on this vlog show.
Well, there goes number 10. The remake of Powder.
How easy was it for you to make this list?
Well, when you asked me, I'm like, oh shit, I don't think I've seen that many. And then I text you, I'm like, oh, never mind, I forgot January's a thing. Because like half of them are from January. So the bottom 3 are just like, whatever, lame. Like they're not, if I saw every movie this year, I doubt I put it as the worst. But like after that, they get pretty bad. And I was kind of like you, I was like, oh man, I forgot that came out, because 2020 both seems like, you know, a couple days and like a couple decades at the same time.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I scrolled through my list, and I had to go through a different mindset on this, because usually whenever I've done this in the past, it's always like, okay, well, I want it to be at least something that I saw in the theater, or at least that I know.
Not 2020.
Yeah, at least something that I know like played at least for like maybe a week in a theater or something. This one was a little more interesting in that there's a few choices I have on here where it's, if it was any other year, I don't know would have made the list. But this, I'm like, yeah, I'll factor in some of the direct-to-video movies this time. What's your number 10?
Okay, number 10 is my, I was gonna say remake, but I guess it's a remake of The Grudge. Well, when we saw this, it was a little bit of a shame, because it's a dumb idea to remake this again. I mean, the original's fine. The remake's decent, but it's like, nothing really that new was added. And most insultingly, it was just boring. It was so boring. That was the only thing I remember kind of liking in it was the performances were decent. I don't remember anyone acting really bad. I don't remember you know, like in a lot of bad horror films, you kind of snicker at, you know, some of the performances. But I remember the acting was really good. They just had nothing to work with. All the cinematography was like grainy and brown, and it looked like both shit and piss were ran through the film, you know. It was just ugly looking, and I barely even remember a thing about it except it was boring.
I barely do too, because that was one where I was skimming through titles earlier and was like, yep, that was 2020 in January. Like, I completely forgot I saw that. All I remember about that one is I remember thinking it was random. Like, wasn't it kind of just a series of a lot of different random things going on, barely stitched together by the ghost, and then it just kind of ended?
Yeah, it just kind of stopped, and every time you kind of be like, oh, well, where's that going? Oh, I forgot, I don't care.
I know.
Like, every time something mildly interesting would happen, either cut to something else, or they just do something really not interesting with it.
Well, maybe we'll have something to look forward to next January where we get the Scream reboot.
I hope it's as exciting.
I hope it's the same director. My number 10 is... this one I forgot came out this year as well. Assassin 33 AD. The movie that... Dude, we're gonna take... Fantastic Four and Back to the Future, make it a little more like God's Not Dead.
Now, Fantastic Four or Fant Four Stick?
Either or. I say that, but honestly, Fant Four Stick.
There is a difference.
There is. This one, it's the one about the students who are recruited to make this time machine, where it turns out it's this secret operation by Islamic terrorists.
Did you review this?
I did.
And the snob? Okay, I do remember.
I did it as a snob episode, and I remember doing that, but I think I just forgot that it was also a movie for... I'm not used to doing snob episodes on movies that were made that year that I do the episode.
Yeah, no, that... I completely forgot until you brought it up and I don't... From the review, I remember that being pretty funny.
The movie was hilarious. Like, they go back in time. It turns out this time machine is being financed by Islamic terrorists who want to go back in time to assassinate Jesus.
Do you want me to put Chaplin away, by the way? He's got me out.
In fairness, he did see this movie.
Okay, yeah, he's like, not assassinate!
I think he wrote it. No, like, when I get done with it, I'm
okay.
Totally. No, this one, they go back in time. They meet Jesus because the terrorists want to assassinate Jesus to stop Christianity.
It's pretty much that Mad TV sketch, right?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah,
where the Terminator goes back to save Jesus.
They even reference the Terminator in it.
Of course they do, but not Mad TV.
Yeah. Oh, I think
then they
Jesus...
have to own up where they got the idea from.
I think Jesus does say, "I'll be back" in the film, and like it's like how in like Back to the Future, where like, oh, Marty McFly inspired Chuck Berry. They do things like that in this, where the students who go back in time are the result of things that happened in the Bible. Like who was it? Was it Simon Peter who helped Jesus with the cross when Jesus?
Simon, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the student's name. Who runs up to him and helps Jesus with his cross.
Oh my god. Or did they literally say that? See, what I like is that, it's like Simon's there. It's like Back to the Future where, like, Simon maybe helps, like, the father or mother of the actual Simon. Says, Simon, that's a nice name.
It's super close. Like, it's super close. One, I like the fact that, like, if you're just going back in time and assassinate Jesus when he's on his way to be crucified, doesn't that mean Christianity's still gonna start? It's just gonna start a little earlier?
Yeah, that's right.
Stupid terrorists.
I mean, it didn't work once. Why would it work a second time?
What do the crucifixes look like now? Just a bullet-ridden body just hung up on... That's what they did. They just shot him a bunch of times.
It's just a giant bullet.
Yeah.
Number 9 for me is Fantasy Island. Just
Yeah.
another kind of nothing horror film, but in terms of The Grudge, it's a little bit more insulting because it could actually be a good horror film.
It could have been.
It's not a bad idea to turn into a scary movie. Mm-hmm. But it's another one where I just remember thinking, okay, we're just kind of doing what, Fantasy Island as a horror film. Ooh, what can we do? Just the bare minimum. And then again, it becomes very boring, very bland. The the guy who owns the island, you think of Ricardo Montalban, oh man, all that charm and everything, and the dude they have in this,
Michael Pena.
Yeah, he's been funny and stuff, and he's been entertaining, but he just leaves no impression.
It was
at all in this. Yeah, I mean, you need, like, the owner of Fantasy Island has to be a dude with just this incredible charm and charisma, even if you're going to do it as a horror film. And there was just nothing there. The people I don't remember being that interesting. Honestly, whatever I remember about this movie, I remember from the trailer. Like, the friend there, dump water, oh yeah, kill, wait, I think this is real. And it's kind of just that concept and then nothing more. Even when they try to add more, it's so not interesting and forgettable. So I just... There's just nothing to it.
It is a wasted opportunity. Like, they had a concept and, 10 minutes to make this movie.
Yeah.
Because there are episodes of Fantasy Island that are more so horror-based than some of the other ones. So, it's not like it's impossible to fathom that there is this kind of movie adaptation on Fantasy Island, but they just didn't run with it enough as they could have. It felt so quickly put together and miscast. And between this and Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, Blumhouse has done some decent movies, but I'm noticing, if the name of their company is part of the title, it's usually not very good. Blumhouse's Fantasy Island. Blumhouse's Truth or Dare.
I never thought about because they're kind of like A24 in that they do they have interesting ideas with horror.
Yeah.
But they're kind of hit and miss. And in a way, I kind of respect that because it's like, okay, you're trying something different, doesn't work, on to the next thing, maybe this will work. And I kind of respect them both for that, but it's when they miss... It's a I'll say, when Blumhouse misses, it's boring. When A24 misses, it's kind of fascinating.
It's at least ambitious.
Yeah, it's a fascinating kind of miss, where with Blumhouse, it's like, oh, you just did the bare minimum.
Because they know they're always going to make a profit.
Yeah.
Like, Jason Blum is a phenomenal businessman.
Oh, yeah,
like,
clearly. Well, and again, they've made some good movies.
Oh, they have.
Yeah.
And even their lesser ones, way more often than not, will still make a profit. Because I think he just sets like a $5 million budget on all of them. And that's about it. So, with the exception of like Jim and the Holograms, most of them have made a profit. Mine, oh boy, I'd be shocked if mine cost a fraction of $5 million. Number 9 on mine is the Jonestown Haunting.
Got to remind me of that one too, man.
I have to remind myself of this one because when I was looking through a lot of titles earlier, there were ones I saw on there that I remembered being really bad, but I didn't remember much about. So I was like, well, if I don't remember it that much, then it obviously didn't stick out that much to me, so I would kind of leave some of them off the list. Like, I almost put Evil Boy on my list, because I remembered hating it, but all I can remember now is, like, I just remember the parents being really stupid. Jonestown Haunting barely made this list for, like, a similar reason, because there's not a lot I remember, but I remember a little more than enough, where it's 10 years after the events of Jonestown, a girl who survived it is being haunted by bad memories of it, goes to Jonestown, and it's kind of advertised like, oh, is she going to go to Jonestown and then is like haunted by a bunch of ghosts who try to kill her? No, she just goes there, and she's haunted in the same way Linda Blair was in Exorcist II, The Heretic, where she just kind of meditates a lot and does some drugs and sleeps a lot through the movie.
Well, addiction is scary.
Yeah, well, at least it was, with a movie like this, at least it's usually only 70 minutes long. And in this, it was hilarious when they would flash back to Jonestown, because it made Jonestown look like there was only about 10 people there. And, like, you have the guy playing Jim Jones in the People's Temple, and it just looks like there's just some crew members sitting in the audience, like, dressed not like it's 88 or whenever the movie takes place, 10 years after Jonestown.
You, cameraman, push record and then sit here. That's in the shot.
Oh, and believe me, I know that happens between between like movies Ryan and I have worked on. Like, oh yeah, when they do the movie premiere in another Cinema Snob movie, oh yeah, that's crew members sitting behind us and that. But I am like, well, at least we're not trying to recreate Jonestown. Yeah. So that was kind of humorous about the movie. Like, where are the 200 other people who died at this tragic event? Yeah, that was what I remember about it. Is funny and bad enough to put on.
It's like that I Love Lucy sketch with where's the 5 layers? Ah, they're all in there. Like, where's the 200 people? They're all in there.
Oh, they're there. They're just off camera. You can hear the sound effects of them in the background or something. Watch the one from, was it Guyana, Cult of the Damned? That was 1980, I think that came out. Watch that one. At least you get to see a guy's nuts get zapped with a car battery. This one just has someone sleeping and doing acid.
That does not sound like a common thing you would see, nuts getting shocked by a car battery. What's the name of that one?
Guyana, Cult of the Damned.
Alright.
That was
already more interested in that.
It is a way better movie than this, I'll give it that. At least there are enough extras for it to look like Jonestown.
Number 8 for me is Call of the Wild.
Yes.
This is another one where I feel like if I saw much more movies this year, this wouldn't be on the list. But it does just the strangest thing in telling a story about a dog, a live-action story, and making the dog completely computer-generated.
Yeah.
And, like, I can't do CG animation. I don't know how difficult it is, but I can say with how far CG has come, with this idea and everything, it was the wrong choice. Because they were animating this dog like exactly that. It was an animated dog. And apparently, found out later, this is a dude on all fours turning in a performance, and that's what it feels like. It does not feel like an actual dog. I feel like anyone that has owned a dog or has, you know, a love of dogs or understanding of dogs knows this is not how dogs react to things. This is how a person imitating a dog reacts to things. But even taking that out of it, you can still... Okay, well that's distracting, but maybe it's a good story and everything. It's based on a Jack London story that I did not read, you know, I'll admit, but I know enough about his stories to know what type of stories he writes. They are brutally harsh. It's often man versus nature stories. nature usually wins.
Yeah.
But they are just very, very tough. And this was trying to... you could tell they probably wanted to go all the way with the story and be really, really harsh. But they said, nah, we want a PG rating, tone it back. And when I read what actually happens in the story, I'm like, that sounds more like it. That sounds like a Jack London story. And the idea of having this CG dog that doesn't look like it's there, moves like a person imitating a dog, and it's supposed to be ultra real and ultra aggressive, just made... It made me frustrated because I feel like there's so many good elements around this, and Harrison Ford is in it. Turns into a pretty good performance. I found the director was Chris Sanders, who's directed like How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch. He's actually like the voice of Stitch. He's this big name in animation, and he's mad talented. And I feel like he just this is the first bad movie I've seen from him, and I think it was just either there were too many notes saying no, you have to do this, or it was just a miscalculation.
It can show you how one miscalculation can put something on a list like this, because you're right. I remember seeing this, and there is a lot of decent things about it. I don't even really remember disliking it necessarily, because I did... The script was fine. You had Harrison Ford there, who was really good. Dan Stevens was amazing in the movie. I want that girl. That's my kind of over-the-top villain. But just that one thing about it, with this dog sitting there, and it's impossible not to picture in your head just this guy sitting there, while Harrison Ford is turning in this performance with a guy sitting there with mail in his mouth and things like that.
Even if you're not, because I didn't know that, when I saw the trailer, just the minute I saw the trailer, I said, that can't be the dog. Are you serious? It just looks like a CG puppet. It looks like a cartoon. And the argument I made is, why wasn't this entire thing animated?
Exactly.
That would have made it, because then the dog probably would look very real. And half the backgrounds are animated anyway, and they look very pretty. The guy has a background in animation. It would make more sense. It's one of the few times where I'd be like, I could see, everybody craps on him, and I see why. But, sort of like that Zemeckis motion capture thing, working pretty well in something like this. And I feel like, in a strange way, I feel like they could almost get away with being harsher and closer to the story, because there's so many plot holes in this that make no sense, mostly around the Stevens character. My favorite scene is that, Ford says that there's this, cabin that apparently is supposed to have all the great gold, and he lays out this map, and he on the floor, and then he's like, starts here, but then it goes off map, and he draws it on the wood of the floor, and puts a little X there. It's like, it's there somewhere, but no one's ever found it. Okay, whatever. So they go, obviously they find it. The fucking bad guy in this, that, again, has one scene in the book and then he's gone, but now he's the main villain in this, comes in, sees the little line on the floorboard, there's no this many feet or this equals that or any spots, and there's mountains, and this guy's never traveled a day in his life. His passengers, the people with him, died because he didn't listen to any information. But he looks at this map and the line going onto the wooden floor and somehow finds what tons of people have apparently died looking for, and Ford stumbles upon it, and this guy who literally all the people with him died because he was so incompetent, and he found it like it was nothing.
Oh, that's what happens when you take a random character from the book and make him go the full Billy Zane. I'm there for it.
and that's the thing, Jack London books, like I said, he wrote White Fang and stuff like that, which is just so much better. And again, shows how a story with a real dog, there's just a different way you read expressions on certain animals, and dogs are incredibly expressive, but in a very different way. And White Fang shows that. They trained, those dogs very well. Where if they're trying to go for this harshness that Jack London usually gets across in his books, I feel like you couldn't meet halfway on this one. You couldn't kind of go Disney-esque with it. You had to be something really new and really daring and really harsh, and they just couldn't deliver.
But if you want a movie that does show how expressive a dog can be, that's why we got Playing with Fire.
Yes. How many can we get? Please tell me that's what you're going to use for the title card. Like that.
I think I might have for last year's list when Playing with Fire was Rob's number 1.
Well, good. We'll have the tradition going.
My number 8 is The Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson.
That looked bad. Man.
Oh, it...
Also, a few years too late.
Oh, it would have been bad back then, too.
Yeah, but at least there was, like... It was a little topical, because you saw movies all the time on OJ before there was even a verdict out and stuff
story.
like that.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I feel like I would see that back in the mid or early 90s, but it's like, why are you making this now?
Yes, but I don't know if the conspiracy theory was around back then.
Of course they were.
I mean this specific one that the movie's about, right. Where it's it might have been, I don't know, but what this movie's about is what if OJ didn't do it, and instead it was the Green River Killer, this famous serial killer from back then. What if it was that guy who did it, because that guy was working on a house in Nicole Simpson's neighborhood, which I think he was, and then the two of them later have this affair where he starts stalking her, and he's the one who kills her out of jealousy, and OJ's framed for this whole thing.
Sounds like a really, it sounds like people that saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and didn't get what made it good.
You have no idea how close you are.
Yeah,
this is from the director of The Haunting of Sharon Tate, the one where Sharon Tate was getting haunted by ghostly recordings and having premonitions and things like that. Same director, and might as well be the same exact movie, because there are moments in this movie where it turns into a Nightmare on Elm Street, where Nicole Brown Simpson is...
It was Freddy all along. That was the bloody glove left. I just took off the little sharp knives.
Close, because like she's getting haunted in her dreams by this shit that is dragging her up the wall and ceiling and everything, like Tina in a Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, and the movie is also from the... He puts a lot of slasher movie elements in his movies, because this guy has actually directed some really good documentaries on. He directed the Friday the 13th documentary and Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street documentary. And there are cameos in this from people from the Friday the 13th series. It's just in a movie, in a true crime story about Nicole Brown Simpson, where she's stalked by Nick Stahl through the whole movie and is dragged up the wall like Freddy Krueger secretly killed her.
Is there any so bad it's good elements?
Oh, hell yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty much a majority of my list is like that. Like, really, it's the worst movies of the year, but also the 10 movies you should see from 2020. The Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson's definitely one of them. Yeah, it was, they do have OJ show up at one point in the movie, and they just got a guy who, like, if you squint your eyes, like, kind of has the body type.
I thought you actually meant OJ.
The closest it comes to that is the movie... Oh, I forgot about this. The movie actually ends by showing the real crime scene photos, and then over the credits is the actual 911 phone calls from Nicole Simpson.
Tasteful.
I know. I'm like, movie... How did you manage to get even more untasteful, like, in the last 5 minutes of this film? Now suddenly I miss the Jonestown Haunting. That was way more tasteful, and that box cover has a mountain of skulls on it. This one, I'm looking at actual crime scene photos.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like when... If you're already going to go so far as to, like, kind of, quote-unquote, you know... whatever, show what really happened, or a conspiracy or whatever, you know, based on a real, like, murder, death. I mean, it's like, okay, times pass, it's like, okay, history and stuff like that, but when you're actually gonna play the shit, like, I don't know, that's pretty ballsy. At
the same time, though, Rob and I have a gentleman's agreement that if I were to tragically die, he gets to make a biopic about me that's a lot like Wired. John Belushi.
I'll play it.
You please do.
Hey, sexy.
I told Laura this, and Laura goes like, he better still get my permission first.
I'm really curious if this is on your list. Number 7, The Witches remake.
Surprisingly, no.
Oh, okay. Well, again, this is... and so if there was, like... Again, if I saw more bad movies this year, I'd probably put this as, like, number 10. I'd have it pretty low and stuff like that. it's another one of those where as soon as you see the trailer, you're like, oh, this isn't gonna work. This is... I feel really bad for Zemeckis because that's a super talented guy who clearly got into, who did just this groundbreaking stuff and did these timeless movies. And then he seemed to get into, he's kind of like Cameron, he got into this one thing he obsessed over. For Cameron, it was the Titanic. And then with Zemeckis, it was the motion capture. He clearly thought this was the future. And there's some cool stuff came out of that. I'm not going to totally bash it. But he, kind of like Spielberg, he got into this way of filmmaking that's kind of dated and not, it just isn't that interesting anymore. And the only thing that I still give him credit for is that he does try to make things a little scary. He knows the importance of having creepy things in kids' films. Even in Polar Express, there's like the little puppet scene. He knows the importance of that, which I like. And this is a Roald Dahl story. He knows it's dark. He knows it has to be dark. And it actually starts off okay, because I just saw the original for the first time before I saw this one. And one of the things that did bother me was they did not dwell... spoiler, I guess. The parents die, a Roald Dahl book, who would guess. But it opens with the parents dying. And they did not dwell too much on that in the original. It seemed like they wanted to get to the creepy stuff pretty fast. This one takes its time with it. And you see the connection between him and it's the aunt, right?
The grandma.
Grandma, okay, the grandma he stays with. And they get a good connection, and it shows him, sort of trying to live with this. And I really like that. And a part of me is thinking, maybe this will work. But as soon as they get to the hotel and the witches come in, and no, I take it back. The time you see the first witch, I remember in the original Witches, when you saw that witch for the first time, it's still silly, it's still over the top, but it's scary.
No,
it's creepy. It's a legit creepy movie. And the second this one shows up and you see her with this super fake snake and talking, I'm like, this is too ridiculous.
There was a realness to that moment in the original where it felt like some real, hey kid, I got some candy, get in my van moment.
But what was so interesting about the original was that the witches are still kind of stupid. And they are a little... I feel like they're funny to adults. Watching, like, well, these are actually kind of dumb people, that they're all very emotional, and they scream and yell, and stuff like that. And they try to capture that in this, too. But they still have them scary. And in this one, with the exception... I argue the mouth thing was kind of neat. I'm looking at if I was a kid, I'd be scared by that. And again, some of the shots of the arms stretching out and going into the vents and stuff like that. Again, I'm thinking if I saw this as a child, that might creep me out a little bit. But after that, it just... there's not much to it. It's just Zemeckis kind of doing what he thought... what we probably would too 20, 25 years ago would be impressive. But now it's just so much CG and we're so used to seeing it and we can recognize what's not really there. And when you compare that to the original, when all that makeup, which is, the 80s, man, and I'm still looking at this like, wow,
it's
just
still
imagine
impressive.
them up under that, and you can still see some of the areas aren't blended in, as some parts are peeling off and stuff. But it's it's really there, and it's so creative that I just felt like this was, if they wanted to have any chance of this working, they had to have prosthetics. They had to actually have stuff that was really there. And Zemeckis, sadly, is not the guy to pick to have stuff that's really there anymore.
And if you're going to going back to what you said about Call of the Wild, if you're going to do things like that, with the mouth, the arms, the stretching and all that, I could see that working better in an animated movie, not in this.
Yeah, why, again, this practically looks like an animated movie with the colors and the way people act and stuff like that. Why not do that? The Roald Dahl books had all these illustrations in them, so why not utilize that as well? It just, the first half of this just felt like a more dramatic episode of Everybody Hates Chris. Chris Rock.
You did!
And I love Chris Rock, and he has turned in great dramatic performances as well as comedic performances, but witches are real! I'm like, no, I'm not buying this. Though I did really like Octavia Spencer. I
No,
thought
she was good.
Sold and was very different.
I'm with you.
And both the grandmas in both these films are, some of the best things in them, and their dedication and just totally different way of doing it, I think, was the strongest point, probably.
Yeah, I'm with you in that there was 5 or so minutes at the beginning where I was optimistic about where it was going, and when it took a turn, it took a quick turn for me and never recovered from it, and only got worse. In a normal year, this probably would have made my list, because I really, really didn't like this movie. But in a year where I'm like, all right, let's make this the year we put stuff like the Jonestown murders on there, or the Haunting, whatever it was called, on here. Yeah, this didn't make the cut this time, because honestly, like I said, I think I gave this a D-, but at the least there was like that first 5 or 10 minutes that was kind of okay, and yeah, some of the acting was all right. Octavia Spencer was good in the movie, but my number 7 is, I know I've referenced this a bunch of times the past year, but Tulsa. This was when movie theaters came back briefly. Movie theaters briefly came back a few months ago, so I went out to see most of the stuff that was playing, which a majority of it was stuff I was just walking in blindly to see, because there were just these random movies being put out that I never saw a trailer
Was this
for.
the one that had that weird poster that looked like it was photoshopped at the last second? Or am I thinking of a different movie?
No, this one's got... Okay. No, this one has a poster where it's... So the movie is about a guy who finds out he's got like a 5-year-old daughter. So I went into the movie...
Okay, now I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, I went into the movie thinking it was just going to be some quirky indie, like, melodrama comedy about a guy and his kid. Not knowing, which I should realize at this point, not knowing I'm walking into it, and it turns out to be one of the cheesy religious movies. And one of the most annoying, like, tropes you see in a lot of movies like this is, like, the overly precocious kid who speaks in, like, TGIF sitcom dialogue.
But also has words of wisdom sometimes.
Is the entirety of this movie. Like, that's always been a criticism of mine of many of these movies, but it's usually just one part of them. This is an entire movie based around that. An entire movie made around this 5-year-old who, again, just has these cheesy sitcom jokes, does really bad words of wisdom throughout the whole film, and then comes in super annoying to wake up her dad with a guitar singing like he's got the whole world in his hands, or something like that. It's like this doesn't feel like it's a real character. This feels like it's the world's most annoying Christmas spirit showing up to bother this guy.
I was gonna say I always call that the Tiny Tim syndrome.
Yeah.
Because I always say I don't think I've ever seen Tiny Tim done well in anything, and there's a reason. It is a very difficult character to make in any way realistic, because it's a character that at a very young age, is very sickly, knows he probably doesn't have long, so he has to grow up very quickly, and has these words of wisdom. It's kind of wise beyond his years, because he doesn't have many years left, and that is so difficult to do convincingly without it being too corny and too manipulative.
Mary Lou Retton and Scrooge did it.
Yes, some good flips too.
I want to see that play. So this was... You're close, because she is dying in this film.
Yeah.
And so it's sent to the world's worst hospital with John Schneider. This is my favorite part of this movie. This is one of the... Like most movies I went to go see during that time period, I was the only one in the theater. And Dr. John Schneider comes in, and they're sitting there like, but what about the daddy-daughter dance that's going on at the assembly hall? And John Schneider's like, well, I'll tell you what. The exits are around the corner. You promised to have her back by midnight. You can go to this dance. I don't want to spoil for you how well that turns out.
Yeah.
This hospital's got a lawsuit on its hands.
That's what I love about stories that do this. They're trying to, like, when people are trying to look like, we'll be the cool rule breakers, because we're ethical. And when it completely backfires and it's never addressed, I love movies that do that.
This one does.
If for any other reason, just for us, it makes the joke so much easier.
I know. it's what I wish I wasn't there by myself, because I'm like, no one's here to experience this with me. I have to just go and tell this tall tale of this movie that I went to go see. No one's gonna believe me. But that's Tulsa. Again, a movie I'm actually recommending that you see. Number 6.
Number 6 for me is Artemis Fowl.
That almost made mine.
And this was, and so I hear people that grew up with the book. The book series is apparently supposed to be very, very good. And this is nothing like it, apparently. Yeah. And this is one of those films where I was going in knowing it got a lot of bad press, and everybody was saying it was awful, but I also saw Kenneth Branagh directed it. Yeah. Not like he always made good movies, but it's like I'm always interested. Even when he does something bad, I'm kind of interested in it. And again, it starts off like, okay, well, I'm a little interested. Let's see where this goes. And it just got dumber and weirder and, in some respects, lazier, because this whole story, I say, is pretty much just Home Alone with Harry Potter characters. Yeah. You know, it's just these magical creatures trying to break into this home, and that just doesn't sound that exciting. Unless it's like a horror film, you know, like Krampus or something. The boy, sadly, I'm watching this, like, you know, because part of the idea is his father is disappeared, and I'm thinking, like, oh, well, he's... Like, at first I'm like, this is a good performance because he's keeping everything inside, and he's very intelligent, and he doesn't want to let anyone on to what he really knows. But then when it gets to scenes where he is supposed to be emoting and lowering his defenses, it's like, oh, this is just what he was told to do throughout the whole movie, and so there is no interest in him. It's another one of those stories where there's it's like Jupiter Ascending, where there's so much exposition and, and explaining. Yeah. And when you actually look at what's going on in the movie, it's like, but nothing is going on. It's like they forget you have to actually do stuff with all this explaining. Instead of just saying, you know, like the whole film is just them talking about how they took one step forward. Yeah. You know, that's just not that interesting. The only plus I had in the movie was the... fairy in it, the one that's caged up and trying to hit I remember her being very good. I remember thinking, I wish... It's another one of those films where it's like, I wish she was the main character. Like she legit performed well, I think it was just the performance, because I was about to say she was written well, but I'm like, I don't even remember that much about her. It was just the acting. I was legit like, okay, well what's she gonna do? I like how she's trying to trick people and trying to hypnotize them and find ways out of here. She can be very nice, but when she needs to be cutthroat, she can, you know, so, I
mainly remember Josh Gad's shitting dirt. Like,
that's a scene too,
I mainly remember that, because that was one of those moments I had to capture on my camera and probably tweet something sarcastic about it. Sitting through this, for me, felt like when I sat through Last Airbender, the Shyamalan one, in that neither I know the source material. When Airbender came out, I'd never seen the show before. This, I had never read these books before, really knew what they were about. So, when I see people get really, really mad at this movie, it's understandable because they read the book and they know the source material, whereas I didn't have that going into it. Same with Airbender. But both movies are still bad, even if you don't.
And you're right. They're similar in...
a lot of exposition.
In that you can tell it was based on something else, and it moved at a different pace than what we're seeing. Yeah. You know, where Last Airbender was based on a show, this was based on a book. Yeah. And they clearly did not know how to adapt it into a film format, and arguably maybe should not have been. With Last Airbender, that's a whole season of a show and a movie. That's ridiculous.
And this feels like they didn't really even, because that is like you said, it's a whole season condensed into one movie. This is like they didn't really even do that with this book series, from what I understand from people who
so everything I hear, you know, that the book series is really good, but like a lot of fans are upset because it's like they didn't even try to do like what the book attempted, and it sounds like it would have been difficult to do from what I'm hearing. It's just like, why didn't they just do this? Why didn't they just do what was in the book? Like, this could very easily be done. It shows.
My favorite part of this, though, was because this was supposed to be in theaters, then it got put on streaming, but when the theaters were back here for a couple months, I went there and they still had their old posters up. So you'd walk in and there was still like a big Artemis Fowl poster sitting there and like a giant Mulan thing. So
I think there's still a Sonic the Hedgehog poster at the theater near
there
us.
is. So you're walking in there going, "Ooh, the before times!" Like,
and it's very faded too. The sun is really.
Oh my God! You're looking at it going like, "Whew, guess I saved myself $10 on that one."
Just like, was Sonic supposed to be green?
Yeah. Oh well, this is appropriate. The name of my number 6 is Corona. So there was that Michael Bay movie that he produced that came out like a month or so ago called Songbird that was about the coronavirus, and it's pretty bad, but I was kind of lenient towards it. Like I think I gave it a C- or something. It's pretty bad, but I was like, it's not on my list because I saw Corona, and Corona's way worse.
Is this the one with all the walking, or is that different?
No, I know what you're talking about. That one's on the list.
Okay.
No. This is the one where it's all in an elevator. And it all takes it's the devil of coronavirus movies. So it's all in an elevator where they think one of them has the coronavirus, and it's all shot in one continuous shot. But it never feels like it's for any kind of ambitious artistic reason. More so, it'll be quicker to shoot this way.
I was gonna that. So did people flip their lines? Like,
yes.
Keep going.
And it doesn't feel like, because there's people stepping over their lines and kind of stuttering, and a couple of the performances are fine, but like there's some where they're kind of stuttering and stumbling a bit, but it never, again, not in the way that feels like a real conversation. More so like there's a lot of ad-libbing going on here. Not great ad-libbing in something they can shoot fairly quick to put out in theaters. Or, yeah, theaters. So, and it's... everyone in the elevator is of like a different type, meaning you've got the Chinese woman in there, and also like this married couple, this rich guy, also the janitor.
Tell me there's a little kid in there.
That I can't remember, but there is an old guy who's a white supremacist, and you know this because he has a swastika tattooed on his forehead, like, and is in like...
I'm sure he could get a lot of places without people saying, "Hey! What's that on there?"
So they all have
That's
these...
a conversation starter.
God! Oh, yeah, so that character's set up to have, like, just these straw man arguments through the whole thing.
Let me guess, there's some uncomfortable conversations.
Oh, yeah, there is. But then, like, it's, this is a real black and white world, so there's some of the conversations where the old racist, who's so old and set in his ways, he's got a swastika on his head, but just this one guy saying one thing will make him be like, "I guess you're right." Like, yeah, all right, that's how the world works. Like, and plus, there isn't that much material for there to be a full-length movie, and so the first, like, I don't know, 10 minutes of this film are opening credits, and the ending credits go on for a while too, from what I remember. It's got this giant opening credit sequence where it will show just stock footage of cities and then cut to one credit. More stock footage of other cities, cut to one credit. That for like 5-10 minutes or something like that.
And then the ending credits, do they go about this pace?
Probably.
Upward?
From what I think it does, is it one of those that does the end credits twice? There was
they show bloopers, except they don't laugh. They're like, "Christ, we have to do this one shot all over again."
And that is the fun part of watching stuff like this, is trying to figure out where the cuts are. This you could kind of tell, like, okay, whenever there's like a blackout or something, like, oh, yeah,
there it was.
Someone caused a blackout so that there could be a cut.
The camera has to turn really fast. Oh, I wonder why they did that.
Yeah, I think it happened a few times in this, but that's why I was lenient on and Songbird was bad, but Corona was way worse. That's my number 6.
So this is one, I didn't know if this counted because it was technically a Disney Plus movie, but everything's streaming now, so why not? It was the Secret Society of Second Born Royals.
Thought that's what it was going to be. That almost made mine.
Well, I had warning going in with yours,
Yeah.
because it was another one of those where I'm like, well, this looks lame, you know. But I mean, there's been a lot of Disney Channel, Disney Plus, you know, Wonderful World Disney movies. I'm like, well, that looks bad, but sometimes it surprises me. You know, it's either legit good or it's so bad it's fun.
But this one's not your usual fairy tale.
No, it's not. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm so sick of that. You know, it's funny because Disney, I feel in some respects like there's stuff that Disney should be given flack about, but then there's some things where it's like I like. Sometimes Disney gives a little pushback. Like, I love it in Wreck-It Ralph 2 when all the princesses are like, you know, does everybody think the day was saved because a big, strong man showed up? And she's like, yeah, what's up with that? Like, I like that because it's giving a little pushback. Like, there's definitely some stuff you can point out, yeah, it's a little sexist or whatever, but, like, then some things people just really ride all the way, you know, and they've addressed it so many times in like Enchanted. You know, they talked about it there, and I feel like now, like so many of the things they're pointing out, the cliches, like even pointing out the cliche, it's a cliche now. I'm turning off my phone.
And it so goes for a second, I think it's mine. Like, did I sit on my phone and like change the ringtone?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh no, you're fine.
So now it's like a cliche to point out that this is a cliche.
Yeah.
And these cliches now, I mean, especially with like what they've been doing with the animated movies and stuff like that, I feel have come a lot further, and they're actively, you know, trying to do stuff to, you know, move stuff forward, but still be interesting and still have good characters and good storytelling. So when they do something like this, like, it's not that kind of story, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Like, those kind of stories I don't even think are told that much anymore, because they are seen as, like, so dated.
But it'd be more original now if they did tell that kind of story.
Yeah, honestly. But the thing as well is that, again, kind of like that Pepsi commercial years ago with, like, all the protests.
Yeah, dude.
You know, it's like, oh, no, Pepsi will save the day. They're kind of doing that now, too.
Yeah.
And I feel like Disney's been hinting at this for a while in a lot of the movies, and now this one, they're just straight up doing it. It opens with a protest, you know, but it's done by a princess of this, you know, royal family that... By the end, I mean, I guess this is a spoiler, but who gives a shit? If she just friggin' talked to her family once without bitching and moaning, she would have found out, like, everything she's complaining about was about to be fixed. And was about to be opened up, but she was so set in her ways of just, you know, I just wanted to bitch about something, so I guess in a strange way it showed, you know, what the problem is with not listening, but I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was still to show, no, fight the power, and this is popular, so we're gonna try and cash in on this. And it felt like it was trying to combine X-Men, you know, and princess stories, and spy kid stories, you know, and stuff like that, and combine it with protesting because it's popular. And
from the point of view of a character who feels like they're only doing this because it'll get a lot of Instagram likes.
Yeah, like that's the thing. And it's just so, I don't know. I guess we kind of saw this with like the hippie movement and our stuff like that. It's weird.
Definitely.
It's weird to see something that was meant to be like a protest and like a movement suddenly become like a selling point. And when you see Disney doing that, which they are not good at, it just feels like the bottom of the barrel, and they just don't even try to hide it or disguise it or do anything interesting with it, and it makes most of the characters, especially the main character, really insufferable, and just the story in general super unimaginative.
That's what was hard about this, because if you're going to have a movie about someone who is this royal who has their own loft practically to practice with their band, and you're gonna have them bitch about how shitty their
that's
life
another one.
is.
Lemonade Mouth, that's another one that's trying to be like the rock band and stuff. I'm like, it's another thing I forgot they tried to shoehorn in.
The rock band and everything. If you're gonna have a main character who they have all of these opportunities in front of them and all of this wealth and this pretty great life, you're gonna have them just continue to bitch about all of this. You have to make sure that character is likable. This doesn't do that at all. I couldn't stand this self-righteous, entitled brat in this film.
Well, it's one of those things where you feel like if they like, if this character did exist, there wouldn't be a ton of people like, yeah, fight the power. They'd be like, you are in a position of power. Why don't you do something? Why don't you? You are the sister of the person who's going to be in charge of everything. Why don't you actually, like, do something about it instead of doing a little rock band protest?
But I did have a moment like Josh Gad shitting dirt where I'm like, gotta get out the phone for this one. Click. When she falls, was it the leaves carry her?
No, the butterflies.
The butterflies carry her when she falls off the thing. That was one of those, oh, that just happened moments.
Like, one of the worst effects, like, laughably bad effects. And that's, you know, most of the actors in here are doing the best they can, but that's one of those where I'm just thinking, like, man, the face on that girl trying to tell herself, all right, so butterflies are supposed to be carrying me down to the ground while I'm laying flat like this. And I'm supposed to act like this is really happening.
Yeah,
and there's going to be an
absolutely.
amazing effect making
We're
this
Disney,
look
it's
convincing.
going to look great.
Yeah.
I hate it. This movie put me in a shitty mood for the rest of the day. Like, I was way more mad at this movie than I was a lot of the movies on my list. It's just more like, well, for like technical reasons, like I gotta put some of this stuff on here. But no, yeah, I hated this movie. I did. This movie, that movie just made me grumpy. But I'm glad someone else saw it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's one of those where even if you took out, like, whatever, the sort of bratty main character, the whole protesting, you know, element to it, it still would have been lame because it's just clearly taking from stuff that I don't even think is that popular now. It feels like it was popular 10 years ago. Stuff like X-Men and being in a rock band and, you know, I guess a little Harry Potter because they have, like, magic powers and stuff like that. But, yeah, it just, so even if you took that element out, it'd just be lame.
yeah, dude. Yeah, and like a waste of my morning.
Yeah.
I should not have watched this after waking up. I'm curious if my number 5 is on yours. My number 5 is Faith Under Fire.
I cannot confirm nor deny if that is on my list, but let's hear your thoughts on it.
Secret Society of Second Born Royals was hard to sit through. Faith Under Fire was not. I loved sitting through that because Secret Society, like, its flaws are what made me mad. This movie, its flaws are what made me love this film. But it is so incompetent in all of those where I'm like, well, yeah, it's a way worse made movie than the Disney Plus film. I can't get over the fact that the church had goons. Goons when the guy comes in after he punched out Reverend Dean Cain and they patch things up, so he goes back in there with his family, but the church goons come up to him like, hey, buddy, yeah, you're gonna have to get up and get the hell out of here.
Well, what I like too is Dean Cain, Reverend Dean Cain, didn't even know, like, the church had goons, so you gotta wonder if afterwards he's like, who else have you thrown out of this place?
Yeah, this has happened before.
That's the exact opposite of how this place is supposed to work.
Yeah. Jesus is gonna come in here and flip all these tables over. Like, God, like, it found a way to be bad at things that I would never have even thought of beforehand. Like when main character is getting this horrible news about his daughter, and for whatever reason, they're shooting this scene in this tiny cubby hole of a nook with him and Kevin Sorbo that's taking up a majority of the tiny space in there. Or when it fades, it does a fade in on the same shot to show that time has passed, but they don't change any lighting or anything like that, so it just looks like this is 5 seconds after.
Yeah, literally the shot is exactly the same. I think he goes from this position to this position.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, that's hours past, clearly.
But I loved sitting through this. It's probably my favorite bad movie of the year.
So, I mean, I'll save it because, spoiler, it is on this list. All I can say now is I agree.
Yeah. I was curious. I think that might be, that was like the only thing I have on my list where I'm like, I think that might also be on Doug's because I know he saw it.
Yeah.
What's your number 4?
Number 4 is Mulan, the remake.
Figured that one would be on there somewhere.
Well, and what's interesting, when I did the little vlog review of it, I was really afraid people were going to be like, you son of a bitch. Because Mulan has a huge following.
Yeah.
You know, it did well when it came out, but it's just gotten this huge following of people that really like it. So I thought, oh man, I know there's people that like the Disney remakes, man. So I thought, I'm going to get ripped apart for not liking this movie. But a lot of people agreed. I think critic-wise, it did all right, but like people that like the original movie just hated this film.
Yeah.
And I do always say, if the other Disney remakes did not come out, I might not have disliked it as much. It still has very clear problems to me, and I don't think it's as good as the animated one, but because I think Disney is just doing the same thing over and over. I mean, God, 3 of their films are on my list. I mean, 3 Disney films. That they're doing the same thing over and over, where they're putting kind of like their message, you know, that this message of progress. And honestly, good messages, but ahead of story, ahead of character, is just really doing a disservice. And I think that's one of the things where, as much as they try to say, oh, in the past we were this, we're not anymore, like, there's good qualities in a lot of those past projects, and that's why they last so long. That's why people do still like the original Mulan, because the character was a product of her time. You know, that she, wanted to be this matchmaker, you know, she was going to see the matchmaker, and she was going to be, teamed up with a husband and everything, and she was doing it because it's what was expected, it's what her father wanted. But when it didn't work, and she wasn't very good at it, she feels heartbroken, she's torn apart, sings the song. The father comes in, says, you'll find something, it's okay, is very accepting. But then, immediately after, the father's going to be taken to war. And she says, no, you can't. You're too old and everything. And he says, I'll die for my country. It's an honor to die for my country. I know my place. You know yours. So she goes into battle not knowing a damn thing about fighting. And you realize that sacrifice, and it allows her so much room to grow. And, she's not only entering this world she has no idea about, but she has to do it in disguise. She's pretending to be something she, really has no idea about, how to be, a man going into this. So there's all these really interesting elements, even though, ironically, I think the movie's just okay.
Yeah.
Because this remake had stuff I really wanted to see. I wanted to see a more serious story. I didn't really want to see Eddie Murphy as the dragon and stuff. I get why people like him, but it's like I wanted to see a more dramatic story, because I felt like this could be a really epic story. So I was excited for this, and they took all the elements that would make this an epic story, and they Disney remade it. She's now perfect. She's already
a Jedi at the beginning of it.
Yeah, she's a friggin' superhero. The father is encouraging of her to do all this stuff that was not accepted at the time. So it is totally out of character when he says, I know my place, you know yours. That makes no sense at all. And when she decides to go to battle, it's almost like an afterthought. I guess she's just settling the armor and riding off, and you don't feel the sacrifice because she's already perfect.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so many, I've talked about this movie so much now, but I feel like that's so many of these Disney female leads now, and that's a shame because, for some of the problems that were, with whatever, Snow White and Cinderella and stuff like that, there was still this passion, there was still this drive, there was still trying to overcome something, where now I feel like so many of the lead characters, at least in the remakes, are just designed perfect because they want to give us strong women, because we've had this this cliche, the stereotype that we've had to fight in the past, but you're sacrificing the whole reason for the character even doing what they're doing. The whole idea of why have a character, why have a story. And that's a shame, because I feel like this could have been a really good remake. It was PG-13, there weren't any songs in it. I thought this might be the one to finally turn it around. This director even, like I said, directed Mulan already with Whale Rider, which is a brilliant movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, and she practically did the story wonderful before. Which is what, we're not on set, we don't know, but it just feels like Disney said, no, you gotta change this, gotta change that, have to have this, that has to match this, has to hit, these check marks, because they're in every Disney remake. So, with that said, it still looks very nice. I like the philosophies of war in it when she's being trained and everything. I like the attempt of not, putting in the songs and making it more serious, but the bad stuff in it is just so distracting and coming at the end of these cliches, just slowly beating people down. I feel people with Mulan are finally just beaten down by the cliches of these remakes. So, sorry, that was a long rant.
No.
I don't know. It's so funny because I always say it's not the worst of the remakes, but it's the one I think I just get the most passionate about. No, because I think I really saw the potential of what this could be. Yeah. And I got excited for it. I was legit excited for this film. And they still just did the same bullshit and just aren't learning from it. And like I said, I think I get more angry because I saw the potential of the really great film this could have been.
Yeah, now I'm not that close to the original, really. I've seen it, but not a lot. Just like maybe a couple times with a lot of years in between that. So when I saw this, there was a lot of... having not being that close to the original movie, which I do remember liking.
Yeah.
But watching this... There were a lot of things about it where I was like, okay, I can't remember if that was in the original, if the original was like that. But with that being said, not being able to really compare them a lot, for me, it was very in one ear and out the other movie. Like, it wasn't, I didn't dislike this as much as I did, like Dumbo or Beauty and the Beast or something like that, but it was... For me, sitting there watching it, it just came across as more forgettable. I think I gave it kind of a middle-of-the-road review, but it's hard for me to even remember that much about this movie.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, honestly, a lot of the critics that liked it said the same thing, like, fine, because same thing with the original. Like, the original clearly struck a chord with a lot of kids growing up, and I'm with you. I like it, but I think I always saw the potential of what it could be, and I always kind of got excited for it. Like, I don't see many Disney epics, and I'm a big Disney fan, so it's one of those things where I'm like, man, I'd love to finally see one of these, like it done really well. So I think that's why I get so passionate about it, because I always think, man, in a parallel universe, the movie that universe got, where they did it right, it's like one of the best films of the year, kind of thing. It's one of the worst.
Well, mine, I don't know how much potential my number 4 had. My number 4 is Trump Card. The Dinesh D'Souza.
Okay, I was gonna say it's got to be that dude, the Hillary's America. It
is. Right? Yeah. Oh yeah. Again, a movie I loved sitting through this year because I got to introduce Jared to it, who had never seen one of this guy's movies before. He was sitting there pissed off. I was sitting there laughing my ass off, going like, "Oh no, dude, it's par for the course at this point."
Just real quick, when I first was told about, because I think Hillary's America was the first one I heard about, and I thought it was going to be kind of like a Fox News just skewing the information and going, haha, you see, it's what they're trying to hide and whatever. But I think when I saw your review, I was like, this is so funny, and it's just so comedically done, and it's like, whether you want to say it's funny that so many people really do believe it or buy it or take it seriously, if you want to say that that's funny or really troubling, whatever, but everything I've seen of this guy has been hugely entertaining.
Oh my god, this one, it's like, it's sold as this like capitalism versus socialism film. Yeah, a little bit. Like, what you get when you sit down is it's bookended like a Saw film. Like, they're redoing the 2 + 2 = 5 thing from 1984, but doing it like it's in a torture porn universe, which then cuts to a sad Dinesh D'Souza walking through Times Square, where now all the ads and everything have been replaced with communist propaganda, and he's just sitting there like... And we'll say, like, dumb shit, but then look at the camera as if he thinks what he said is going to blow our minds. Oh my god, it's...
How long do you think he does a remake of They Live, where he puts on the glasses and it's like Biden saying, I will get you?
Yes, I hope so, because like
there's gonna be so many more of these movies now that like Biden's brand, like from him anyway, Yeah,
he has a movie out like every couple of years, so I'm guessing in 2022.
They take that long to make?
I get, which is weird because the one he did 2 years ago was mostly stock footage of his previous movie. This one, oh God, what else happened? This, you would have, again, scenes where he's talking about why he likes capitalism, why he dislikes socialism. Like, yeah, okay, fine. But then it's just surrounded by a lot of sleazy tabloid rumor and stuff that's thrown in throughout the whole movie. Like, he talks to a guy, so he'll be talking about socialism, but then it'll cut to him talking to this guy who says, oh yeah, I smoked crack with Obama and gave him a blowjob. And then Dinesh D'Souza will be like, we'll try to make this point where he goes, how come the media is always talking about Stormy Daniels, but they never talk to Larry the crackhead? Like, yeah, man, I don't know.
Can't put that together.
You got me there, dude. And, like, he finds a way to make a documentary and have you sit there and go, wow, the acting's really shitty in this documentary. He reenacts him getting the pardon from Trump, because D'Souza was in jail for a little bit. And so D'Souza is sitting in his office and gets this phone call as he's writing one of his books that, like, zooms in on it, and I don't know, it's like, Maddow's a whore, or something. Not literally, but it's something insulting. And so he gets a call, and it's a guy doing a terrible Trump impression on the other line. He's like, hey, I've looked over your phone. I don't do a good impression either, so mine is probably on par with the guy in the movie. He's like, yeah, I've looked over your files and decided to give you a pardon. And D'Souza's like he's getting a birthday call. It's like, oh my God, Mr. President, thank you! It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I haven't seen one all the way through, honestly. I've only seen the one that, like, your reviews of them. But even just the clips I see are so funny. I don't know, it's just, like, his next one will be about, like, the lizard people or something like that. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could be mad, but they're just so entertainingly awful.
I can see you, because I was annoyed when I first saw one of his movies, but, that was in a year where tensions were kind of high anyway, and I didn't know about anything about this guy going in, and I was, like, just not having any of it. But now, like, when you see enough of this guy's movies where you're like, oh, this is a troll film, like, and if it's not, wow. Yeah. Like, again, like I said, like, in this movie, he'll be like, here's what I think's great about capitalism. But then it'll cut to him talking to some guy going like, I think Representative Omar's ISIS with lipstick. Like, okay, Grandpa, like, you need a beer or something? I know, like, if there's anything really bad about this, is it only made number 4 on my list this year. Usually his are like number 1 or number 2. I don't know what that says about his movie or the other movies on my list.
Why not both?
Exactly.
My number 3 is Antebellum.
Oh, yeah, it's not on mine, but it's one I was wondering if it'd be on your list.
It's one of those because it's a film that would be wonderful satire. It could be both really funny and really scary, on the levels of something like what Jordan Peele is doing.
Yeah.
And this marketed that from the producers or the company that made Get Out and Us and stuff like that. And it was pushing it hard. And I saw the trailer for it. I'm just like, everyone that saw the trailer was just like, what is that about? I don't know. It was so hypnotizing that when you saw this movie and you realized it was going to take itself 100% seriously on an idea that is 100% bonkers.
Yeah.
That would have been, again, like Get Out, would have been really, really good if it was satirical, was another one of those great missed opportunities, because it's something where you say, if you could take a step back, if you could get out of the way of your own bullshit, you could actually make some really good commentary. And instead, it's something that, I mean, we brought this up a million times, but it's very similar to the remake of Black Christmas.
It is.
Where with Black Christmas, I mean, I don't think I had any opportunity with that story to be good. This idea is actually like one of those where it's like, man, like Get Out, it's so absurd, it could actually be really clever. And for me watching it, shame to say, I did not put together what the surprise was. And part of that was the trailer. The trailer was giving an idea that something else was going on. But when I got to the actual surprise of the movie, I was almost more angry because I'm like, that's kind of clever. Like, it's something that's so, like, it's so insane. You could see something like, that dude making that documentary saying, like, no, like, this exists, except it'd be whatever the flip is of it or something like that. So it kind of like Mulan, it made me angry because I saw what it could be. And if it had any sense of humor outside of getting the actress from Precious saying some one-liners every once in a while, I think it could have been this really great social commentary movie. Instead, it's another soapbox film.
Yeah, it was, again, it looks fine in terms of a pitch if you're pitching like, oh man, it's 12 Years a Slave meets Hostel. But when it takes itself so seriously and doesn't even do a good job at that, it lends itself open to asking so many questions about this and this universe, and none of it is very properly answered in any kind of convincing way. It is more well-made than the recent Black Christmas. Like, there was... It
looked very nice. Well, especially we talked about the opening shot of
that was really
like,
well done.
Whoa, man, what a... I mean, just that shot alone, like, you could just end after that and be like, man, I'm satisfied. What a movie.
Exactly.
Whew, like, you could read so much into that. It just goes downhill from there.
It was another one where, like, I went to the theater a few months ago and its poster was still on the wall, and you're just thinking about how much money I really saved on all of these with them going direct to streaming
like
now.
Artemis Fowl and stuff. Yeah, I'm just like, whew, can't dodge a bullet with some of these.
Yeah. Well, except Mulan, I think I paid more with it being on streaming. No, wait, I take that back because we all shared the same...
That's true.
We all shared the same account to watch it. It's like, okay, yeah, even that I got a sweet deal on. My Brother's Crossing. Speaking of movies I saw by myself in the brief period movie theaters were back. My Brother's Crossing is a movie so incompetently made. It has things that happen in it that I only see in parodies. It's similar to, like... It's the same kind of religious movie as something like Faith Under Fire, where it has to do with, like, tragedy and grief and things like that. And it's got a plot that's not... It's not a bad plot. It's not like it couldn't be a decent enough movie. In this film's case, it's a guy is driving with his son, gets into a car accident, it kills the other person, and then it's about the person who died, his brother, having to forgive the other guy, and then they end up becoming friends. But there's not much conflict in it.
Is it based on a true story?
It is. Okay. It's based on a true story, and there is books about it, and these guys do give speeches, which is probably way better done than what this movie is. Because in the movie, it's not like the driver is driving erratically or drunk or anything like that. It's simply a car accident that could happen to anybody. So since there's not much in the way of a lot of deep conflict, it's sort of just the same scenes repeated over and over.
They have, like, the same conversation.
Yeah, a lot. So many times in this movie. And it's so incompetently made that you can hear, like, sound brush across people's microphones. And when there's a fire at the beginning of the film, something happens that I only see in parodies, where the dad and his son come out of the store and they're reacting to this fire across the street. Only we never see it because the budget doesn't allow for it. So you
even get, like, stock footage of a fire.
Right, but Faith Under Fire did that. Like, it had, like, some fire in there. This was like, oh my God, look at that. That's crazy. And now here comes the police. Like, whoa, I'm seeing this on the big screen, aren't I? Again, I was the only one in the theater. And they have an opening credit sequence where it's like trying to look like animated, but all they do is just take clips from the movie and put just like a filter I have on Pinnacle 12 over it. But blown up on the big screen.
Brad, you weren't the only one in the theater. God was with you.
Yeah, that's true. And my large popcorn. and its plot was resolved about an hour into the movie, so then the rest of it is just the main characters going around giving speeches, the same speeches for about the next half an hour. It was one where, like I said, it's not like the plot's bad necessarily or anything like that, but there's just so little of it that it is stretched over this running time with this like parody filmmaking and lousy acting. It was yeah, that's why it's way up there for me. But again, I'm the only one who saw it. I need more people to see this film.
Well, maybe this will get more people to see it, man.
Exactly. Go out. It might be on video right now. Or if you're in a town where theaters are still open, it might be playing.
Yeah, still, they never got new films in there.
Oh yeah. Yes, please go see this.
So we're seeing on the big screen. Whoa! Look, a fire!
And then, like, when they get in the car accident, it's just like they just shine some like flashlights on the windshield of the car. Like, fade. Classic. Try not to look at yours, so I'm surprised.
Well, number 1 won't be much of a surprise because number 2 is Dolittle.
I think that's Laura's number 1.
This is another one I totally forgot that came out this year.
Yeah.
This is one of those that is intriguingly bad. We just watched it dumbfounded because we heard so many things about it. People saying this is just like, just a fascinating kind of bad. And I saw it with Rob, and we just watched it, not sure what we were gonna get. And I think Rob, at some point, just stopped making jokes and just started screaming. On the first viewing we're watching it, at some point, like, I think it was at a point where orangutan just comes up like, I would like a massage or a dance party or something like that. And out of nowhere, Rob just goes, ah! He's like, I got nothing left, just screams, ah! I think at the end he even summed it up in screams. He said it was starting off like a ah! And then it became a oh! And then it became a oh! But I settled on ah!
It's a talking animal movie, so a few times you're gonna have a
yeah. It was just because it's kind of like, so again, a big shock. What number 1 is, both this and my number 1 spot are like The Room in that you constantly say, why did they do that? What was the thought process that led to shooting it that way and saying a line that way and having this happen in the story? And with this one, my guess is that Robert Downey Jr. probably had a different accent through the movie, and then they decided to go with a different voice because maybe either it wasn't that good or they're like, nah, we need to make it more silly or something. So they dubbed in this incredibly over-the-top way of saying everything in this very ridiculous accent. And to make it even sillier, whether or not they knew they were going to do this or not, half of his lines, his mouth is covered or his face is covered. So they dub over it. There's a scene where he's saying something in a book and they just hold it like this and says some lines, like some exposition lines, and it's just like, well, on set, they must have known they were going to do that, but why? Did they not have the story complete? Did they not have the lines done? Or did they know it was going to be dubbed? You don't know. And then the way it's edited, you can tell there were longer scenes where he said a lot more, because you can tell, like, there's a scene where they're on the boat and you know, the kid comes up and says something. He's like, well, my lad. And you cut away and he says like one sentence and then you see him on the stairs like, like, think about that. And I don't even know what he said, but you could tell there was a speech there that was cut. And so many scenes are like that, where you can tell they were trying to save it in the editing. Something went wrong, budget was slashed, or the story was changed, or they couldn't get what they wanted, who knows. And it's just intriguing. It is such an intriguing, almost new kind of bad. Like, it was just this new level. I'm like, I don't know if I've seen this kind of bad yet. Like, this is really, really fascinating.
Not at this kind of budget.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of those things I've seen in like a no-budget Doris Wishman 70s exploitation movie, like a Diary of a Nudist, where they're covering up their mouths because they'll be dubbing and they don't want to have to completely match all of these lips. That's things I've seen in a movie like that 40 some years ago. Not this modern $150 to $200 million big budget blockbuster where they're doing stuff like that. It was jaw-dropping.
Yeah. There's some... sometimes you'll watch the making of a movie. Again, I've noticed this definitely with Disney films. Sorry to bring it back to Disney so much. But, I'd see, the making of Frozen 2, and they'd be talking about, they start animation and everything, and it's all going and stuff, but, they didn't have this one element figured out of who's calling to her in the night, and they just made half the movie without knowing who was calling to her, and that is just, fascinating to me, how that's what the movie is. How could you not have that figured out yet? But as bad as that movie is, it's it's you can show it to a kid fine and stuff. There's stuff that works in it fine. It's competent enough, to be okay, it's not for me, but it's not Dolittle. Yeah. And same thing I saw with Inside Out, halfway through the production, they said, sadness should be with her. And to me, that's how could you not have made that decision? That just is what made the movie. So you'll see kind of these things, and this film felt like it was doing the same thing, but they never figured out what the missing element was that it needed to work. And they had a light script, but it felt like there was maybe 4 or 5 scenes where they're we'll figure it out when we get there, and they never figured it out.
There's a lot of times where that does happen. Like you said, Die Hard, they're making the movie, and as they're making it, trying to figure out what Hans Gruber's escape plan is supposed to be.
I think I always hear Casablanca was apparently done that way. So it's not that it can't be done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it can be. And it probably happens more often than we think.
Yeah, definitely. Or even in post, last minute, they could be let's throw this in. But this was a movie that just felt okay, it wasn't just one thing that was missing. There was 5 or 6 super essential elements that were not in this movie, that were not figured out, and they thought they would figure it out along the way, and they never did.
Yeah, you can tell by looking at it. Even if you don't know there weren't a lot of reshoots in this, you can tell by looking at it. Things when a movie like that does what we're talking about well, you don't know that when you're watching it. It feels complete. The story feels complete. Like everything was just planned out from the beginning. This isn't like that. You're sitting there watching it, feeling the reshoots on screen, and it was one of my favorite movie going experiences this year, because I didn't like the movie either, but it was great because of how mad it made my wife. Laura was having none of this, so the enjoyment I got out of it, because I needed something, it wasn't the film, it was my poor wife sitting there kicking the seat in front of her, having none of this, slouched down, and every time one of those animals made a pun through 90% of this movie, she would sink more and more down in her seat. And it was great when she'd get up to use the restroom, because she'd come back and I'd lean over and explain to joke she missed, which would make her more angry.
And that's the thing, you could explain the jokes. I bet for the life of you couldn't explain the story.
Lord, no. That was frustrating about this, because if you want to check out the midnight screenings of it, because it's me and Laura leaving after that, and her just constantly saying over again, I hated this movie. But yeah. So what made this hardest to sit through for me was the fact that it's so bare bones in its story, you can't tell how far you are into the movie. It is just random things that happen.
It's is this the climax?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
I don't know.
Are we in the second act, the third act? Where are we? And it's these random segments that are stitched together with, was it Emma Thompson? Someone doing narration.
I think so, yeah.
Narration would come in clearly summing up scenes that were probably whole scenes in the script that would maybe stitch this together a little better. Yeah, it was, you're right, in that you don't get this kind of $200 million movie all that often.
No, this is one of the, you were talking about Laura's reaction, and I was talking about Rob's reaction. This is one of those movies, It sounds odd because it's number 2 on the list, but it's kind of out of respect because I hope this movie kind of grows a following. I want this to be one of those films where people film their reactions watching it.
Oh, sure.
Because I would like, hearing Laura's reaction, that's so funny. Watching Rob's reaction, hilarious.
Yeah.
I feel like anyone watching this movie and just but both the what the hell's going on and then just the misery of it as well, I think would just be just as entertaining as, the bizarre piece of shit movie they gave us.
Yeah, and it's like, it could have made, because it's not like no one went to go see this. This stayed.
Isn't it?
No.
Didn't it bomb?
Because the budget was so big. It was one of those movies that, what would it come out in January?
I think so.
There might not have been that many family movies around then, at least ones at this kind of scale. So it stayed in the top 5, I think, on the box office for a number of weeks. And it's not like no one went to go see this. It made money, but not, or it brought in money, but nothing that could ever match that astronomical budget that
it was like
had.
the Cleopatra
Totally.
of Dolittle movies.
Yeah.
Which ironically, I think the original Dolittle was like, I think that was another one where it cost a lot, and I don't know if enough people went to see it, because just training the damn animals and everything was so
At least that was in the day where you could have an epic and it would probably still get nominated for Best Picture, because the original Dolittle was up for Best Picture.
That's so weird.
Oh, I hope it happens with this. Movie theaters closed pretty early in the year last year.
It'll be like,
Dolittle could.
If I got an Oscar ballot, I would totally vote.
I would too. I would every movie on my list I would put on there. Like, who's this idiot? This is your best movies of the year? No, it's the worst, but I want you to nominate them. My number 2 is Rob's number 1. So Rob's here. This is what Rob would have put as number 1. So he's here in spirit with this movie. It's the Bobbleheads movie.
Garbage!
Is that what he told you?
That's just my impression of him now. It's just garbage! Whenever someone's like, oh, Rob's here in spirit, I'm just like, oh, here, I'll imitate him. Garbage!
Yeah. Oh, that's what he was screaming when we were watching the film.
Well, it's funny because he said, you want to guess what Brad's number 1 is? And I said, is it Bobbleheads? And he's like, yeah. So now your number 1 really will be a surprise.
So Bobbleheads was my number 1 for a while, till I made some altercations to add in things like that on a normal year I wouldn't have. Things like Jonestown Haunting and Corona and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, well, I better put this other thing as number 1. But if this were a normal year, Bobbleheads would be number 1. And it's not, and the reason for that is beyond it was so bad it rendered Rob and I pretty speechless while watching it. We really didn't say that much when this movie was on, because it kind of took the wind out of us a little bit. There's things that I've seen this year that are worse written than this. But the one thing about it that makes me put it this high is how nauseating it is. How it actually hurts your stomach to watch it and make it. It's literally physically hard to sit through. Like, you get a stomach ache and dizzy watching it because.
Do they do like points of view from the bobbleheads? Like the camera keeps going like this, or?
I don't remember if there was any POV shots. There might have been, but because it's. I'm like, maybe this is just a flawed concept anyway, because, I mean, it is a Bobbleheads movie, so yeah, I guess their heads would bobble, but when you're watching that through this movie that's already a badly written film, like, the script's not there for it, the animation is bad, the concept is odd in that it's like Toy Story, but just with Bobbleheads, and Bobbleheads can die in this film, where they have to save each other from drowning and things like that, and things almost kill them. So now I'm like,
where do bobblehead souls go?
Or how many dead bobbleheads are just sitting on people's shelves now? These, like, horrific corpses of these live things that we just have in our houses now. But it's just the constant shaking and everything of their head. It's distracting and really kind of gives you a stomach ache. that like I haven't had since that last Jason Bourne movie.
You know, I just realized because I guess with both animation and live action, you know, one of the things you want to connect with a character, obviously. You're going to look at their face. You want to read their facial expressions. We were talking about with Call of the Wild. You want to read the expression of the main character, and so you focus on the eyes. You focus on the face and everything. When it's constantly wobbling like that, I can see how that would make you, like, you know, really nauseated. Yeah.
It was hard to get used to. And just the extra punch to the gut that this is from the co-director of Hunchback.
Oof.
And Atlantis and a few other big projects. And
is it Kirk Wise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe it is. Let me go ahead and double check that. But yeah, just sometimes you got to take a project.
You know, I mean,
you only have so much money to do it.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you, I mean, because I think it's a dude who also did like Beauty and the Beast and
Kirk
stuff
Wise.
like that. Yeah. So I mean, when he started off, and well, what's so ironic, he did these movies that started, you know, incorporating CG into hand drawn.
Yeah.
And then ironically took over and it probably put him out of work. Yeah, like you said, sometimes you just gotta take a paycheck and you don't, I mean, that dude's directed some great stuff. It's not likely this was like his passion project or anything.
No, not at all. Like, yeah, it never feels like although I think it was for somebody at least, because this thing was in development for 30-some years. And oh yeah,
Bobbleheads even been around for 30 years.
Okay, that was news to me too when we watched this. Like Rob was looking it up, going, "No, these things have been around since like the 1800s." Like their popularity like comes in waves, where they'll kind of go away, but then come back, kind of go away, then come back. Yeah, they've been around.
An
a long time.
actual documentary on Bobbleheads probably would have been more entertaining than this film.
So like they were wanting to do this for like a lot of decades and have Cher involved with it, and Cher does have a cameo in this movie.
But if it's been in development for 30 years, it would make more sense to have her cameo then. 30 years ago.
Coming in on a spaceship on a trampoline like she does in this movie. We got a funny video out of it. It was funny seeing Rob get pissed off at this film. But yeah, I get it, like with this getting that kind of reaction from him, because it wasn't a fun, bad kids movie to sit through. It hurt watching it, and because of that, where it's like it's a movie so bad, I actually did feel kind of nauseous. That alone is what bumped it up ahead of something like My Brother's Crossing or Tulsa or Trump Card.
It may have to be something I have to check out, because both you and Rob have talked about it so much. Or I'm just like, maybe for a review or something I may have to see it. But,
you would get a lot of material out of it.
I mean, I believe you. I definitely believe both of you on it.
There's a lot of material there you could get with it. It's not fun to sit through, but material-wise,
you get a lot.
You would. You absolutely would. Just have some Pepto nearby when you're watching the when you mentioned earlier about your number one, going like, okay, now you know what my number one is. In my head, I go, what is this number one? Then I go, oh, right, okay. It skipped my mind because it was on my list, so I'm like, oh, okay, now I know what his number one is.
Yeah, my number one is Faith Under Fire.
Yeah, dude.
And again,
best movie of the year.
I put it on there out of complete respect, because this is some of the most fun I had watching a movie. This really is this year's The Room. The acting is so laughably bad. The dialogue is so ridiculous. Some of the choices they make, like you said, and just how cheap it is, where if you want to show the passage of time, you literally just keep it on the exact same shot. People are pretty much in the exact same locations, positions where they were. You just fade out and fade in. I do feel a little bad because it's, again, like you were saying, it's not a bad story. It's not one of those like God's Not Dead where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe, or War Room or something where it's like, this is a bad message, this is a bad thing to spread and stuff like that. This is a legit good message and good idea, again, about dealing with loss and grief. I mean, twice in this movie, and I think it was based loosely on a true story. I think it was based on a
it?
book. I think, which again, I feel bad because that's a terrible thing to go through. But the way this movie shows it is so hilarious and so laughably poorly done, and also has the kid that's kind of wise beyond her years. But I mean, here's the thing. So there's maybe 2 or 3 shots in this movie where you see the kid, you know, with a full set of hair and everything, and then throughout the rest of the movie she's supposed to have this sickness, you know, this cancer. So they wrap her head in a scarf that you can clearly see her hair through in every single shot. It's always sticking out the back, it's always kind of curling through, and it's just one of those things where they have the comic relief in there that always says like the one-liners, like even during scenes where it's like a child is dying. This really does not belong. Kevin Sorbo makes these weird kind of cameos, and which again was they pushed him a lot in the movie, and he's only in it for a few minutes. And Dean Cain, I will say, was not that bad.
No, he's good. Yeah, he's good.
He was actually one of the few things where I'm like, okay, I like, if this was like an actual, you know, whatever, Reverend at church or something like that, I'd be like, this is a good church. But the goons definitely make it a bad church.
Yes! Hey, buddy, why don't you stand up and take your shit outside?
And I mean, this is one of those movies where when bad news is supposed to be given by this, I forget if it was a nurse or a secretary or something, and it just clearly not an actress, maybe a friend of somebody who knows, and it's like, hi, I'm here to see my daughter. Oh, I'm sorry, your daughter has been taken to the ICU or whatever. And then it cuts to his point of view, because I guess they couldn't film him passing out yet and going, you know, fading to black, one of those things. But her acting throughout the whole thing is just one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Sir, are you okay? Sir, what is going on? Sir, do you need help? Sir, and it is just hilarious.
It's like when you're playing a video game and you don't hit pause and you have to leave the room for a minute, but you're staying looking at some other character in it who has to just sort of
repeat the same thing.
Repeat the same shit again. It's like this movie pauses itself, like, or the director has stepped out of the room for a little bit.
And again, a part of me feels bad because I feel like the main actor in this, you know, is trying to act his heart out and take it seriously and everything, but just is not good at it. And it just feels so, like, both sort of over the top and like overacting and underacting at the same time, and half the performances are like that. And I mean, it's like, how can I not make this the worst film of the year? Like, it's just so enjoyable. It's like if The Room came out, whenever it did, 2000, whatever, and not having that be the worst film of the year. It's like, how can't you have that be the worst? It's just, like, it deserves that honor. So, I mean, again, I'm saying it's the worst, but I'm highly recommending it.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, this is not getting much I think you said, you know, if you put this on Rotten Tomatoes, you'll be the only critic on there.
You
I'm like,
are!
What? So, yeah, if you go, I'm the only quote on there.
It's the only quote on there.
Yeah, no, but this is like Dolittle, where it's like, I really hope it gets more attention and more people watching it, because it's brought so much joy.
Dude, and then it gets weird with its message at some point, like the scene where Sorbo is giving the dude the bad news, and Sorbo, who plays the doctor, and he's fine in the movie for the few minutes he's in. Sorbo's like, well, I'll be praying for your daughter, and then the guy goes like, I don't know, doctors are allowed to say that. Like, he's just genuinely asking. He didn't seem upset by it. He's just kind of asking. But Sorbo like goes in full defensive mode and is like, excuse me, I'm not ashamed of my religion here. And I'm like, bro, time and place for this conversation. Like,
yeah, he gives
anyway,
like a little speech and everything. Yeah.
Back to my daughter. He just told me has cancer.
And even like I forgot. Even the beginning is edited in such a strange way. You can't tell what is happening when. Like, this is just such a straightforward story. For the most part, like, some people get sick a couple times in this, so it's like, okay, so you can get a little lost in it, but they decide, like, at least for the first 20 minutes to just totally tell it out of order for no reason that I can put together, like, at all.
And I just remember, too, the 4 times you can see the camera in the reflection.
Yeah.
It's like, when he opens the screen door to let Dean Cain in, you can see it, and it's like, whoa, they missed that. But then they repeat it like 3 more times. Like, how does this keep happening?
Yeah.
What was it like on set for this movie? What's it like in the editing room where you're missing all this shit?
Yeah. But you could crop it. A lot of shots, I'm like, you could just crop that, tighten it a little bit. I mean, it's not like the quality is so good of the shot, like you couldn't cut this down a little bit.
Yeah. Mine number 1 managed to be worse made than this. But again, it's one that on a normal year, this would just be something like, okay, well, I hardly count that as being whatever, but this year I'm just making exceptions. So my number 1 is Angry Asian Murder Hornets.
You know what's funny? You did mention that, and it's like, I should have put that together, because you said it would be on the list.
Yeah, I think I might have forgotten about it the other day, when we talked the other day, and you mentioned it, and I go like, in my head, I was thinking like, oh right, am I putting stuff like that? Let me see how many bad movies I saw this year. And there were a lot, but it got to a point where I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll go ahead and put something like this on there.
I know what you're saying, because it's like, do you put a movie that like just doesn't even have a right to exist, or it's like so bad it almost doesn't even deserve to be on a list,
Something that feels like if you were to put somebody's home movie on a list or something. So that's why I usually narrow it down to like something that was at least in some theaters. I would love it if this showed in a theater somewhere. This was made...
A double viewing with Jerry.
Yes, it's the same movie, except this one has like bad After Effects Hornets pop up in it. The same ones I use on the Cinema Snobs sometimes. This thing was quickly put together. It was made during the quarantine, in which the actors, which I know we do this like for sketches and things like that, we have to have actors send us footage to use in sketches and everything. This is a full-length movie, and they don't even do that right. In that, it's everyone's shooting their own footage on the phone and sending them together to put in this movie about murder hornets that have taken over, that only sometimes show up in the film, that again are the same effects I use in the State Fair videos when I have a giant bee show up in front of Gino's face. This is... They don't even have their actors doing anything. Whenever I see in any sketches any of us have done, like there is something going on, there's dialogue, or we're talking about whatever
movie. It's also
movie.
Comedy. I mean, it's
and it's not a 70, 80 minute movie.
Yeah.
There's dialogue, there's comedy, there's things like that. They don't even have that. The footage that they're being sent in is just the actors walking places. It's not that much dialogue from what I remember. It is, so much of it is just a character walking to whatever location they're going to. If you have a character who needs to go across town to, I don't know, whatever burial site he's going to that might have some hornets in it, you have to see him getting his keys, leaving his apartment, walking downstairs, walking down the street, walking through the desert. It is like Jerry. It's like if you crossed Birdemic with Gus Van Sant's Jerry. And that's this film. And then once he makes it to his location, you have to see him sometimes walk all the way back. There's conversations where people are supposed to be in the same scene together, but look like it's shot on 2 different cameras at a different time of day. Maybe I'm wrong. It just kind of looks that way. Like it's a different type of day. I'm not sure if they're actually there on camera together. I've seen it be done well, where you get a lot of footage, assemble it together, and make it cohesive and make it flow. This wasn't that. This just looked like you maybe had 5 minutes of usual footage and then used all the raw footage of people just walking to the location. But look, this was a movie, and also this is a movie just made for its title.
Yeah,
that's
it.
Yeah. It's not made. You can tell a lot about this kind of movie when you ask yourself, would the person who, I believe it was Scott Foy who told me this, you have to ask yourself, would the person who made it enjoy sitting through this movie themselves? This is the kind of movie where the answer is clearly no. Not at all. This is just something that was quickly assembled to capitalize on a title. For the
get some money in to make something they actually want to make.
Yeah. Well, I've seen from what I've seen of this person's filmography, it's a lot of movies like this. Maybe the other ones play out better than this one did. I don't know.
Well, even I'm not even talking about the person, just like maybe a movie the studio wants to make as well. To make like more money or something like that. Like, okay, we'll make these 5 movies that have titles, zeitgeist titles that have nothing in it, but they'll sell a bit so we can put that movie towards maybe a title or something we actually want to work on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this seems like it's a I'm not sure if this movie's put out by the dude who makes it, but I mean, like,
well, even like the studio, I mean,
yeah, oh yeah, I think that there's one coming out that's called Angry Asian Murder Hornets versus the 5G Zombies. I think that might be one that he's doing, because that was another movie that they put out called 5G Zombies. So it's a whole studio that is kind of titles like this. And
well, I'm sure there are people that like collect these movies and they know there's nothing on them, but it's almost like, isn't that funny? I got the whole collection. Look at that, haha. Yeah. And there's like people when actually watch it, they just be like, let me tell you what's on. It's just people walking. It's just people doing this. So even like just it existing is enough. You know, almost the idea of putting nothing on there is almost like, I don't want to say part of the charm, because that's not a charm of the movie, but more a charm of the person owning the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like having it ironically kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I own a copy of it, just because my dumbass did it as an episode of the show, so I've still got that sitting on the shelf. Maybe I should use it as a Patreon prize or something. Here you go. Lost that guy's subscription. No, I mean, you could take... I mean, look, it's a movie that's made for the 5 minutes that Murder Hornets thing was a story. But, I mean, you could take that and run with it. Like, not that you'll get gold out of it necessarily, but you could take that and make just this, you know, maybe cheesy kind of fun movie.
It's something like Birdemic, where it's like, they have no money and they're kind of doing this on the fly, but they're doing something.
Yeah.
Even if there's no money behind it, they're still trying to do the same thing with Faith Under Fire. Like, that's horribly done, but they're trying to do something.
Yeah.
Where this, just filming a person walking, it's like, no, you did this to have a disc to put in the case of Angry Murder Hornet.
No, yeah, or something like with a level of satire to it, like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes or Return of the Killer Tomatoes. There's none of that here. It's just the title, and that's it. And you're putting it in there, and like you're getting a nice tour of these people's neighborhood. Yeah, it looks like it's fucking Google Earth the film is what this movie is.
I was gonna say, is it even a nice tour of the neighborhood?
Not really. It seemed very dusty. Yeah. It was very grainy with their cell phone footage. But yeah, that's my number one, because it's a messed up year, so we might as well have a Murder Hornet thing as number one. Why not? A movie about the coronavirus was, I think, number 6 on my list.
Well, I think it's good, because like a lot of the movies I saw were ones that, obviously had kind of a higher budget to it, but, one of the higher-ups with Faith Under Fire, that clearly had no budget, where with yours, the original number one, now it's number 2, clearly had a budget behind it, but most of yours were very non-budget movies, so I think that worked out pretty well.
I remember what I did. It was the last list I did was Sarah, and Sarah's had some like Disney stuff on there, some Illumination stuff, and I'm sitting there with like, a list kind of maybe a little similar to that one right there. She sits there like halfway through the list and goes like, what the? She's like, you're sitting here with this like Kevin Sorbo propaganda about the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm over here like, oh, the Grinch, because the Grinch isn't Grinchy enough. Like, I'm telling you,
both are still good choices.
Both excellent choices. I mean, yeah, exactly. I would probably rather sit through the Sorbo Pledge of Allegiance movie than Illumination's The Grinch. But Well, that's maybe we'll see how next year turns out. It might be a similar situation
in so many ways.
yeah, exactly. Well, like it might be a similar situation where my number one next year will be Angry Asian Murder Hornets versus 5G zombies or Ebola T-Rex. I think is the name.
It might be the Lilo and Stitch remake. I don't know.
yeah. But thanks a bunch for doing this, and thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see if it breaks last year's record in running time.
Yes.
See ya.
Take care.